All right, this is the April 24th meeting of the Citizens Advisory Committee. I'm Deputy Mayor Harry Steinmetz, and welcome everybody back to the meeting. And do we want to do roll? Is that?
No.
No.
I think we're good. I got it.
Okay.
I can take roll from here from the name tags.
Okay.
But
we can
welcome.
see
Thank you.
everybody's name tag. We've got a pretty good packed agenda, which should have lots of good discussion, and so looking forward to that. Otherwise, I don't think there's anything else other than to welcome you here, and we'll move on to the first topic, which is the levy lid lift.
Yeah, I think before we start that, I
Okay.
do want to thank Sarah for getting our packets together. So at the last meeting, there was a request for the committee handbook. So everyone gets a new one of those. Even if you're returning, you got one there. We have a roster for you as well. So let me know if there's anything else that you need. Okay?
Okay. Victoria, you had a hand up?
Yeah, I'll email you.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, so the first topic is to talk about the levy lid lift that is being proposed for public to increase the funding available for public safety. And I'm going to talk just a little bit about what the state law requirements are, the sort of the do's and don'ts for elected officials in their official capacity, or city employees acting in their official capacity, just so we understand the landscape a little bit. And then I'm going to turn it over to the chief, and then Jenny's going to help us do sort of pros and cons and record that so we can take that back to the council. So, state law prohibits the use of public facilities to support or oppose any particular ballot issues. And basically, that includes anything. Couldn't do anything on my computer, for example, but as an elected official or as a citizen of Des Moines, I can certainly advocate for it, but I can't as the deputy mayor, because it's not an official position of the city. Secondly is that everything from paper, stamps, office space, vehicles are considered a public resource, and they can't be used to promote a ballot or oppose something that is going to be on the ballot. There are some sort of nuances to this, which allows elected government official, an elected local body to express a collective decision and to actually vote on the motion of whether or not to put this on the ballot. And that's what we're going to, the council, it's going to be before the council tomorrow night. The elected official gets to issue a statement in support or in opposition of that, and there are what are called pro and con committees that are part of a formalized process that will write the arguments for and against and the rebuttals for and against. That will be part of the ballot pamphlet, or the election pamphlet that comes out. And we had applications open for that. We've had some people on, at least one person on the CAC apply for one side, and a total of 3 people on submitted applications by the time the deadline passed. So we'll have 1 person who's opposed, 2 people who are in favor. And let's see. So that's just sort of, in the big picture, what the, what can be done in an official capacity as the city, and what is not done in an official capacity of the city. The bottom line is it kind of comes down to the city can talk factually about it, and that's what Police Chief Gately is going to address with us and tell you some of the facts around that. I can tell you, well, I guess you can handle the increase part of that as well. And so I'm going to turn it over to Chief Gately to address everyone.
Thank you,
ahead.
Deputy Mayor. Good evening to all the elected. Good evening, everyone. My name's Tim Gately. I've been serving as a police chief for about 8 months. I know I've met and seen many of you in person, but if we haven't met one-on-one personally yet, I look forward to doing so soon. I've been out in the neighborhoods talking recently, so if you hear something tonight that sounds familiar, I apologize. I was down in the Marina District and I was down in Redondo, and a lot of what I've been talking about is the same, but I wanted to make sure to be here for you tonight to talk and answer questions. And once I'm done, I've got time to stay if you need me, or I'm happy to be dismissed so you can talk privately without me. So briefly about how the police department runs day to day. And I've got notes in front of me here because I wanted to make sure to give you the best info. We have 4 patrol districts, and they overlap all of the neighborhoods that you're here representing tonight. And usually our staffing model in patrol calls for 4 officers, 1 in each district with a supervisor, to then be a 5th person to supervise them. Patrol officers primarily respond to calls for service, such as something that comes into 911. They perform community caretaking functions. So, you know, they're driving around and looking for something like someone who needs help, or a community problem that needs to be solved, or something that could become an issue, like someone dumping a junk vehicle along a trail, etc. And then they use their unassigned time to proactively address known issues. And that could be specific to the neighborhood, the city, or the region. During their proactive time addressing issues, they apply officer discretion to what they're dealing with. So they might know of a report of speeding near a school zone, and they'll go to that school zone and try to discern what is the problem, how do we address it, and how do we actually get a good outcome. As I've described to many of the neighborhood groups, you know, we're all trained in the academy that we try to get compliance through the least amount of enforcement necessary. So if I can stop to someone and have a good conversation and build community trust and believe that I'm getting compliance, you know, a verbal warning is probably appropriate. On the other hand, I may go into a situation and think I need to apply an arrest or a ticket, and then I might learn something during that circumstance that changes my mind or leads me to believe that that's not the appropriate thing for that person or the community or the good as a whole. In addition to our patrol teams, we use specialized teams for specialized functions. And that could be commissioned staff members who are police officers with a badge, or professional staff members working in the field or in the office. In addition to patrol out in the field every day, we have Getting People Services, which is kind of a mobile crisis response that has someone equipped to get especially homeless people to the services they need. She also assists greatly with, she's bilingual, so she assists with Spanish-English translation, and she assists a lot with ensuring people in mental health crisis are getting to the services they need. Sometimes that alleviates a response from a patrol officer, sometimes it doesn't. We also have community service officers that do outreach. We have code enforcement. Of course, we're supplemented by CARES, which is our animal control response. And then we have specialized detectives that might investigate a serious allegation or a complex crime, or work after the patrol officers have done their initial investigation. And then we'll stand up specialized units as needed, or we'll use like a traffic unit to conduct traffic safety emphasis. Service levels are reduced when patrol officers' unassigned time is limited, so they're busy doing other calls and they can't do something proactive, or when I need to provide what I will call relief for whatever staff are there. So to have a patrol officer in a beat 24/7, we work 12-hour shifts, so to have one person here in the central district of the city 24/7, we need at least 4 full-time employees to do that, because that covers 24/7, 7 days a week. Additionally, those 4 people have paid vacation, they might go out on FML leave, they might get injured, they might be sick, and they have training requirements as well. So I calculate every year based on our calls for service and our shift, what's called a shift relief factor, which means if I want to put one person on duty 24/7, how many people do I really need to hire? And as is average for our state, it usually comes out to 1.4. So for every one officer I hire, I probably need 1.4 to fulfill that 24/7 obligation. When we don't have patrol officer staffing to meet our minimum staffing obligations, we draw from those specialized services. So for instance, if I had several patrol officers be unavailable to be deployed, maybe they're on Family Medical Leave Act for an extended period, or maybe they're not trained up yet and they're in the academy and in training for 6 months, I will pull from those specialized services and put those personnel back in patrol. So then it becomes a balancing act between providing service levels that are expected both in patrol response in the neighborhoods and in our specialized services. Overall, my goal is to kind of align your expectations with what I have to work with in terms of staffing needs. And in a perfect world, I would want a supervisor, a sergeant, a corporal, which is someone who can act in the sergeant's absence, and 4 officers assigned to each patrol team. That way, if someone calls out sick at the last minute or they need to be in training, it really doesn't impact service delivery because we already have staffed positions to fill one of the 4 districts and to effectively supervise and ensure the quality of what we're delivering. Right now, we have 1 sergeant and 4 officers on each squad, and sometimes we go down to 3. 3 is the bare minimum we ever allow it to get for a short period of time before we call staff in off duty. But of course, that can be a balancing act too, because when people aren't getting their rest or their time with their family and they're at work more, that not only creates issues for the staff, but it creates issues for our budget and finances and overtime, etc. Overall, when we think about the levy and the lid lift and the tax monies that might be brought in from that, I've worked with human resources, input from council, the city manager, and the finance director to develop a plan on what would I do with that. First and foremost, I would want to retain positions that aren't necessarily fully funded because we're using CARES Act money, Recovery Act from the federal government stimulus to fund those positions. So I would want to make permanent and retain 2 patrol officers that are funded by the American Rescue Plan Act. I would want to make permanent and retain our crisis response homeless outreach person in the field, and I would want to maintain and retain our crime analyst. So we brought on a new position, a crime analyst that has never been with the city before. She is embedded with detectives, and she helps with everything from ensuring we're responding appropriately based on data and numbers, but she also does some specialized caseloads where she works to identify missing persons and help locate them, something that maybe a fully commissioned detective isn't needed to do, but a professional staff member can fulfill that. And we have had a lot of success stories from our crime analysts this year. Just this week, she helped someone with struggling with mental illness that was off their meds who disappeared from Des Moines, and she successfully helped locate them 2 weeks later in California and bring them back safely to their family. It happened because there was some data that was mistyped, not by us, but by someone else in a computer, and the person wasn't being identified properly by their name. So things like that where we can help provide a specialized service is important. Additionally, I want to maintain the level of service you receive now, but I want to increase our ability to provide efficient code support, code enforcement support, and or our record staff. Our records unit works 24/7 in the police department, directly supporting all the documents, the case files, the computer entries that our officers are creating in the field. I would want to add 4 new police officer positions with the intent of being to add those full-time employees, 1 to each of our full squads. Back to my earlier point about having a sergeant, a corporal, and 4 on each team. That would provide for a more appropriate relief factor so that we don't get stressed during times of staff leave. I would look to fund some public safety capital needs. When we add police officers, we also have to think about the equipment that comes with them. Uniforms, training, computers, cars. And then we would have to look at our costs to score. If we have more police officers and we're doing more proactive work and making more arrests and holding people accountable, we'll have to see if that impacts our jail that we use for jail costs. And we'll have to look at how that impacts the court and what professional staff they would need to ensure the entire criminal justice system is properly sized. So that, in short, is what I'm thinking about, maintaining what we currently have and then adding to it to get us to a level where I feel like we're more appropriately staffed for patrol relief to continue providing the level of service that is expected by the community. Did I miss anything, Deputy Mayor, that you'd like me to speak to?
I guess when the officers have to make a decision as to what they're gonna do in the field, can you talk about that a little bit more and how they're expected to do that?
Sure. So when, let's start with the calls for service, 911, because that's their primary responsibility. 911 calls come in through Valley Communications, which is a regional dispatch center, and they give them one of 5 rankings. E means emergency. That's drop exactly what you're doing and drive however you want to get to that right now. So those rarely occur. That happens less than 10 times per year in the city. That would be something like a school shooting, or a help the officer call, like an officer's in a fight with a suspect, or there's an emergent, immediate danger to one of our community members that more people are going to be injured or have serious injury if we don't immediately respond. And then the others are ranked 1, 2, 3, 4. And we go to type 1 calls. I have to look sometimes. I don't have it in front of me. Type 1 calls, I would say there's around 1,000 to 1,500 a year. Those are high priority calls where they need someone there right away to stop or prevent what's going on. And then really 2, 3, and 4 have varied rankings. You know, a type 2 might be a traffic collision that's blocking the road and impeding traffic, but no one's reporting injuries. We want to get there quickly to not create another problem, but we're not going to drive with lights or sirens or drop everything we're doing to get there. And you know, a 4 might be a follow-up from something that happened the day before. So as those calls come in, they get screened by dispatch, and then the officers working with their supervisor try to determine how they respond to those calls. The example I used at a community meeting the other night was I was trying to do some traffic safety emphasis related to a known problem. A call came in that was exactly what I wanted to go to and prevent, and at the same time a call came in that was a report of a 6-year-old child wandering around Woodmont Elementary with no parent in sight, and it was after school hours. So then the officer, me in this case, is forced to choose, do I go deal with something proactively that I would like to address and I know is a community problem, or do I go to the higher priority call, which is the 6-year-old kid? So it's things like that that drive our decision making. And then with our unassigned time, each officer is very well attuned to what's going on in their neighborhood and district, and they use their assigned time based on their personal knowledge, what crime analysis is telling us, and what the community is telling us in terms of your concerns and complaints. For instance, I was on a ride-along Monday afternoon with an officer. He works this district right here that we're in. We are in the number 2 district. They're just labeled north to south, 1, 2, 3, 4. And I said, where are we going? And he said, we're going to go up to this apartment complex. We had a report from someone that there was possible drug dealing, and we recovered a stolen car there a couple weeks ago. I want to go check out and see what's going on at this hour. We pulled in. As soon as we pulled in, he saw a green Honda, and he said, I recognize that Honda. That Honda, earlier in the day, 6 hours earlier, had been flagged by our Flock license plate camera reading system and had shown the officer a picture of this green Honda saying it's stolen. And so he recognized that picture from 6 hours earlier. There were 2 subjects in another suspicious looking car next to it. As we pulled up, there were some maintenance guys from the property working on the sprinkler system. We said, do you know these 2 vehicles and these occupants? They said, we've never seen them before. So we were able to contact those 2 occupants. One had a warrant, one had no reason to be there. We seized and returned the stolen car to the owner, towed the car that was associated with the suspicious people, and then there'll be some follow-up on that case. But that's the typical use of discretionary time that I would expect from our officers, is attempting to prevent crime based on knowledge of the area.
Great. Are there any questions? Yeah.
Chief, what can reduce the size of a team? You already talked a little bit about leave, like maternity sick and all that. What about on duty? What can take an officer?
So what can reduce the size of a team? It's important to note that even when someone is tied up on something else, they're constantly prioritizing. So maybe they're impounding that stolen car and an emergency call comes out, we might leave that to go to something else. So we do have some flexibility. But there are other things where we maybe arrest a felon and book them. It might take an officer 2-3 hours to do the paperwork associated with arresting and booking that felon to ensure that the appropriate accountability is held, that they're held in jail the appropriate time, and so that the next day detectives can follow up. So they're constantly throughout their 12-hour shift balancing their caseload of what they need to do and what they need to complete before the end of their shift. The other complexity there is there are some things that can be held over from shift to shift that we don't necessarily hold over on their days off. So the officers are trying to constantly balance, is this something I'm going to complete by the end of this 12-hour shift? Is this something I need to complete within the next 3 days before I go on my days off? The other challenge I have is where to carry my vacancies for non-deployable staff. So if I were to hire, and we are hiring police officers, I think this group is used to hearing me say that. We have 3 open vacancies right now. If I were to hire someone today, and the hiring process normally takes us about 3 months to get through background, talk to references, do the medical, the psychological, all the required state systems, the polygraph. After 3 months, if I could hire someone today, they're probably not deployable for 6 to 8 months. One, they have to wait to get into the academy. There's a 2 to 6 month wait right now to get into the state academy. The Criminal Justice Training Center, who runs the academies, is doing a great job at expanding their capacity, but they're still catching up. Once they get into the academy, they're in the academy for 4 months, and then they go into field training for 2 months. So it can be up to a year before someone's deployable. So then I'm forced with the decision of, where do I now carry that vacancy? Do detectives carry a higher caseload and triage the victims they're servicing? Does patrol run short on a shift and maybe not have a car deployed in your neighborhood that night and it's covered by the adjacent neighborhood districts? Those are the kind of decisions I have to make when we have people that are non-deployable.
So one more sorry.
Go ahead.
One more question related to that. Do you have a guess as to, let's say we're fully staffed according to council approved, fully staffed, and you have no vacant spots. What would you say for the average police department, or even this one, would be the percentage of time that you still are not going to have full staff on the street?
So that's what I kind of call that patrol relief factor.
Okay.
So for every one person we want fully deployed, we really need 1.3 to 1.4 people.
Other people.
Yeah, so when you talk about that in terms of patrol, my current patrol staffing is 20 people. I really need 28.
Okay.
If we were to go to an ideal model, 24, which I talked about, sergeant, corporal, 1 in each district, we really need 34 officers assigned in patrol. And right now I'm authorized 41 police officers and 50 total staff, so the rest being professional staff. So even with what I'm talking about tonight, we would not get to that ideal number. This levy-led list would not get us to 34 in patrol. That's okay, but I do think it is important that I look to the future in how we get to a model that best serves the community expectations and aligns with what our staffing model needs are.
That's good information. Thank you.
Kirsten Hubbard, the marine attendant, sorry.
Yeah.
Don't have my pen.
Can someone
That's
turn
okay.
on the mic next to you?
Yeah.
If you could come close to the mic, thank you.
Well, you can sit up at the
For
table.
Okay.
You don't have to sit back there. You're fine without your
I
tent.
didn't know it was being recorded.
Come on and sit up.
Yeah.
So my question, Chief, is how many of these positions are union, and what are the constraints placed on the activities you're talking about due to the collective bargaining agreements? And when are those agreements up for renegotiation?
So right now, our almost all of them are union positions, guild positions, so they're represented locally by the guild. I've been in this career 25 years, and so I came up through the guilds and the union, and I've always worked with guilds and union. I've been on both sides of the bargaining table. I would not say there's anything constraining this with the guild or the union. They are very communicative and positive about efforts to ensure the staff are safe and that you're safe and that we're appropriately deployed. Your other part of your question was, who is represented? Our support staff are represented by one contract. They used to be in a joint contract with the officers, and they're currently now separating those. So they are negotiating their first ever separate support contract. And that it's always interesting when you bargain a first contract, because both parties are usually just trying to get to what the status quo is on a piece of paper. And then the police officer contract that represents the officers and the sergeants will be bargained this year. It expires at the end of this year. And then the non-represented positions are our support services manager, who oversees records and evidence, our executive assistant office manager, 2 assistant chiefs, and myself. Did I answer all?
Yes, you did.
It was packed in there.
So we're looking at not only the levy money, but potentially even more money when the agreements need to be renegotiated.
That is possible, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Victoria? Oh, I'm sorry, Bettina, I didn't see that up.
As I understand, there may be upwards of 4 officers that might be retiring in the next year or so, or maybe even like in the next 30, 90 days, something like that. What is a worst-case scenario if the levy lift is not approved by the voters?
Well, aside from the levy, I would say the worst-case scenario is always when we go down to 1 supervisor and 3 people on patrol, because it just doesn't seem adequate with how we've aligned our districts and what we need to keep you safe and keep ourselves safe. We are working hand in hand with human resources to ensure once we have in writing that someone's retiring, that we attempt to overhire for that position. A recent example, we had a senior sergeant that had served for 32 years, 34 years maybe, and he was retiring. He let us know 6 months in advance. We were able to not only select a sergeant to backfill him, but select someone to promote sergeant and train on that team, and hire an officer with that kind of 6-month lead time. So we're trying to be very strategic and mindful when that occurs. But in our industry right now, it is a tough industry. When I took my police officer test 25 years ago, I walked into a room of 3,000 people and we were all competing for 10 jobs. Now we have 10 jobs and one person, and we're struggling to make sure they get through the background process, because we're not going to lower our standards in terms of what we expect in terms of values, ethics, etc. So I hope I answered your question, but we try to plan for the retirements. Anecdotally, I think 25 years ago when I got hired, because of the environment as it was in law enforcement and people wanting to continue on in their career, they got to their minimum retirement years of service or age, and they decided from there whether to stay on 5, 6, 7 more years. What I'm noticing now industry-wide, not just in Des Moines, people get to that minimum retirement and they're exhausted. The other thing we're doing to try to really help with that is focusing on officer safety and wellness, peer support, mental health resources for our staff, because our industry has not done a great job with that in the last 100 years.
Victoria, your tent was up. Richard, can you turn your tent?
What's that? Yeah.
Your tent up so I
I just
can.
want to piggyback that question. Do you,
Richard,
you guys
Victoria.
hire,
Richard,
Could you wait just a moment, please?
oh, sorry. I
Thank
thought
you.
you
can you
said,
turn your tent up so I can remember to call on you next? Thank you.
Piggybacking on what you just said, given how difficult it is throughout the state to hire officers, if the levy does pass, how confident are you that you're going to be able to fill those positions?
I'm confident they'll get filled. We are constantly walking that balancing act of how many current vacancies do we have. So when I arrived, we had 3 vacancies. I think we have hired 5 people since I arrived, and we still have 3 vacancies due to retirements or, there is some movement laterally as well. People, it's an employee's environment, and if they see something at another agency that is either closer to home or offers a pay and benefit that seems more appealing to them, or has a medical plan that's better for their family, or a hiring bonus, they might go for that right now, which that didn't happen 25 years ago. You signed on with one department and stayed for 25 years. So it's a change in the industry that I think, and forgive me for saying this in this place, government is not set up for employee movement like that through our processes, and law enforcement certainly isn't with our background processes. They're necessary, those processes, but it's not as easy as the private sector where we can identify talent, hire it, and jumpstart it in a couple weeks. Thanks, Victoria.
Richard?
Sorry about that, I didn't know that was the system.
Okay.
There'll be a verbal warning this time, Richard.
So Chief, it is a couple quick ones. One, piggybacking on the hiring based on speed and time, do you guys bounce between new hires and laterals to determine how fast you need somebody?
We do. The hard part about that, balancing between laterals and new hires, is what is the overall ROI or return on our investment long term? We have a couple working theories we discuss in back rooms at the police department, but you know, if I offer a $40,000 lateral hiring bonus and I steal from someone here in the valley who also needs police officers, number one, how am I impacting crime in the region? Because we're all in this together. I don't think it necessarily does me any good to take officers from a neighboring department, because the criminals, you know, they don't know where the line for Des Moines is on the pack. I don't know where the line for Des Moines is sometimes on the pack.
Right.
I was thinking more out of state.
Out of state, what I have noticed with out of state, and we have hired some out of state laterals, is you really have to be culturally competent. So I've seen some states that are very similar to ours, especially think back before we laxed our marijuana laws. I've seen high success from officers that come from states where their community and their citizens are similar in their expectations to ours. So I see a lot of movement between Texas, Arizona, Colorado, Oregon, Washington, where there's success, and then there's some things that don't translate. And that's not to say it's always the case, but there's an adjustment, and there's a very specific type of officer that thrives in Des Moines and what we have to offer as a community. So we do balance, to answer your question, lateral and entry level. I think entry level are likely to stay longer. If I hire that guy and pay him 40 grand to stay for 3 years, what would keep that guy from leaving to go get a hiring bonus somewhere else in 3 years? So constantly kind of monitoring that. I've hired 2 laterals and I think 3 entry level.
Okay. Just real quick, I want to know, do your officers carry defibrillators and Narcan?
Yeah, so in terms of like life-saving measures, because sorry fire department, but we're awake at night when the 911 call comes in. They got to wake up, find the truck, you know, maybe have a cup of coffee. Wow, says Richard. In our cars, we all have pretty extensive first aid kits that include trauma for if we had a gunshot wound. We all have automatic defibrillators that we can apply right away. We all have less lethal options so that we don't necessarily have to use a lethal option. We have everything from pepper ball to beanbag stabilized rounds, etc. And I'm missing a first aid item. And we all have Narcan. And most of the guys have the Narcan and the trauma kit on their person in addition to the car.
Thank you.
Bernice?
Yes, 2 questions. One for you, Chief, and then the other maybe for the council. You mentioned just a few minutes ago how many officers you would need, and you said that you didn't think you would be able to get them. My question is it because you feel that the lack of money coming in if this levy is lifted, or is there another reason why you think you will not reach that goal? And number 2, for the council, the money that is raised through the lifting of the levy, is that earmarked only for the police officer, the police department, or is that money going to be distributed to other needs or wants? How is that money going to be used? So if you will address yours first in the council, please.
It's a great question on the staffing. So when I said my current model is 20, and with the shift relief factor, I'd like to be to 28, that is based on what the levy is estimated to provide.
And then to answer your second question, it is written into the ballot that it will be used for law enforcement to support and maintain the current law enforcement levels and increase them. It is not going into a separate fund per se, and but it is dedicated money to that, and we're going to require regular reporting to make sure that we can show that money is going into it.
So then my question is, why would it not be separated out so that it is truly just used for the safety of the community here in Des Moines? And the amount that is being proposed, I don't know what the figures are, I haven't heard, but for that amount that is being considered to be raised, that amount is solely for police officers. So if it comes up to that amount, how are you regulating the amount of dollars that are coming in that are going to be coming out of or applied to property tax? I'm a property tax owner, so I'm wondering, how is this levy going to affect us in our day-to-day living?
The property tax we currently are paying at a rate of 90 cents per thousand of property value. That would raise it to $1.40 per thousand of the property value. So those are the amounts that would be raised. That on the average or median, I think, home in Des Moines, that would be approximately $500 a year.
In addition to,
Tracy just flinched, I don't know.
No,
Okay.
I'm
Just
writing
double
some
check.
notes. It depends on the year.
Yeah, it depends on, there are also built into the state law are exemptions from property tax increases that you need to apply for, or that people need to apply for through the assessor's office. And we just got some information back from the assessor's office. And we've had that up at the city council meetings on several occasions about how to apply for that. Chief, you want to follow up?
At the risk of giving away my trade secrets, do you remember when like Kermit the Frog used to run across the stage with his arms in the air and screaming? Like, one key indicator you will see from me if the money isn't spent on public safety, you'll see me on 2/16 running up and down screaming like Kermit the Frog with my hands in the air. So that'll be the first, and that'll be the first clue. Secondly, I've had a lot of conversations with our finance director, Jeff Friend, about this, and Jeff has mechanics built into the budget that he can basically mark those funds coming in for public safety and ensure report outs and accounting for the public safety funding, so that we can, even though it's not in a separate account, he can clearly identify and make sure we have reports accurate for how that money is being spent. All monies, as I understand it, that are general tax dollars do come in through the general fund as a matter of best practice and whatever, I don't want to overstep, laws are there. But yes, there will be a method, Jeff assures me, to make sure that there's a clear accounting of those funds.
yeah, because the community wants to know. They want to know where their money's going
Understood.
and if it's being properly used, so.
Oh, understandable. Yeah,
I
Tracy?
apologize for not having my tent. I did want to clarify when Deputy Mayor was talking about that we pay, or we receive about 90 cents, and that we're going to be increasing that if this levy passes to $1.40, so 50 more cents. But the we is City of Des Moines. So if you look at a circle here, Des Moines right now is only collecting about this much. Here, if your property tax is a pie, we are only collecting this much. So and if it increases, if we get the levy, that means Des Moines will be collecting that much. So it's not like we're almost doubling your entire property tax bill. We're just almost doubling the little pie piece that we get to take out of that whole big pie, if that helps. Your property taxes are not gonna double. We're just gonna ask, thank you. Just gonna ask a little bit more for our pie piece.
Yeah,
I
and they,
don't know how much per year that's gonna increase.
It would be about 50 cents more per thousand. So if your house is worth 500,000, then that's about $500, right?
year.
For the year. So that's about $40 a month or something.
And then if I may add, my estimations,
250 for
250.
$500 a year? Oh, it'd be
Yeah.
250 for 500,000.
yes.
Thank you. Thank you, 50 cents, right, I forgot the half.
and then in addition to, of course, maintaining current service levels, my estimations on the increase were based on approximately $2.8 million a year.
Okay.
So that's how I came up with mine. I took the information that, it is publicly available now from past readings at council. You can look at the breakdowns, and hopefully this body gets maybe a physical copy of that. That might help answer a lot of questions on the financial estimates. It is challenging to estimate tax income.
Sure.
So I think the estimate was I'm gonna get this a little wrong, but it was between 2.5 and $3 million. And so Jeff Friend and I in finance did my estimations based on about $2.8 million per year, and that would maintain and improve.
Thank you.
And, Paul, did you, yeah?
Chief, thanks for the background. In light of everything you were saying about just the hiring issues that everyone's facing, what's your department's retention for the year, and like how does that compare to similar forces?
I have not done any statistical analysis, so this is anecdotal, but what I have noticed is retention, and I've only been here 8 months, seems to be higher in Des Moines. So especially pre-pandemic, during the pandemic, which we were also seeing changes in state laws, officers feeling pressured about new accountability measures being placed at the Criminal Justice Training Center and in state government. Des Moines seems to have worked through a lot of that successfully. We are continuing to see people leave for other agencies from time to time. Had 2 in the last couple months lateral out to other agencies for differing reasons. One is coming back. So the grass is not always greener. So we do have one lateral that is coming right back to us. And then in terms of the retention, we're constantly looking at how do we balance welfare and safety, pay and benefits, working conditions, morale, et cetera, to ensure that it's getting difficult.
So you're saying you're one of the youngest tenured officers on the force.
I am right now, yes.
And Mary Ellen, I did see yours up. Did you come down?
Talked about what I was going to encourage her to talk about, but it's minuscule amount when in the scheme of things.
Okay. Bettina, you're...
I just want to say,
No,
I
sorry.
hope you all heard their correction of me. I did very poor math there, so it's really, it's only about a little over $20 a month if you, for extra officers and safety and everything. So, thank you for that.
Bettina?
This is taking off a little bit on what Bernice was asking about too, and because there's a public that's here, but there's also a public watching, I think it would be really good to cover the items that are line items that you've outlined, because that way you can kind of wrap your head around what this is going to cover, and going into very specifics. Those 4 officers are about 815,000, I believe, or
You're close,
like that.
860.
860.
Good memory.
Yeah. Oh, it's
I have the
215
line
an
items in
officer,
front of me.
right?
So
yeah.
here are the line items. This adds up to about $2.8 million. Just for a baseline reference, police officers are expensive. And rightfully so, for good reasons, but it sometimes shocks the census. So when finance and I calculate a police officer, we usually put it with all pay and benefits, some overtime, vehicles, computers, etc. We're estimating $230, $240 a year per officer. So to add 4 patrol officers is about $860,000 a year. To retain 2 officers from the ARPA would be half that, $430,000. Retain our crisis response specialist, about $135,000. Code enforcement or another professional staff member is in that same ballpark, $135,000, $140,000. Retain our crime analyst, $120,000. Estimating some of our capital needs, $200,000. Estimating our SCORE jail cost increase, $300,000. Our SCORE budget right now for the regional jail, and we're an owner city and the host, is close to $800,000 a year, and I maintain an average daily bed population of approximately 8 prisoners. Now, I will tell you this, I'm very impressed with SCORE Jail, and I do appreciate that they have a very robust health, mental health, medical services to ensure that people are treated fairly and with dignity and respect while they're there, but that comes at great expense as well. So have to estimate and prepare for costs there, and then additional court and prosecution staff, we estimated around $200,000. Thanks for that question.
Yeah, good question.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
I think we're button up on time here, so
Yeah.
we can start doing our
Okay, so
recording here. So,
Jenny,
yeah,
Go
thank
ahead.
you, Chief, for that. I think that, hopefully we all understand the levy that is gonna be going before the council, tomorrow, correct? Tomorrow evening? Yes. So, what we're gonna ask you guys to do is very similar to what we did last meeting with the city manager, conversation that we had, is we are going to flip chart, what do you see as the opportunities and the challenges that come along with the levy lid lift? And then we're going to, I'll provide that in very quick order to, back to the council, so they'll have it, before tomorrow. So if you, so that's, we're gonna start with opportunities first, is what opportunities do we see with the levy lid lift?
and the Chief's gonna go fight bad guys.
Thank you all. I look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you very much, Chief.
I'll just put it out there. The Redondo Association has already invited me back for August, so if you want me to come by and say hi, I'm always happy to. Just reach out. Thanks.
Okay. As long as, I mean, here, how do you wanna do this? Do you want people to raise their hands, or do you want
Yeah.
people to turn their mics on and start?
No, I think we gotta do it.
All right.
We have too many people in the room, so we can either go around in a circle, or if somebody's got something they wanna share now.
Explain what it is you want
No.
us to do right now.
Mhm.
We're gonna have you, let me turn this on. So what opportunities do you see if the council chooses to vote for this to go on the ballot? What would be the opportunities that you would see with a levy lid lift actually being adopted and approved by the people on the ballot in November?
So kind of a pro-con.
Yeah, pro-con. So do you want me to phrase it that way? Is that easier? So let's go pros right now, okay?
Mary Ellen?
So I would say more police equals safer community.
Make sure you, if you guys can turn.
More police equals safer community.
And Victoria, you wanna we'll just continue around? No? Okay. Bettina?
I think, just in general, I know that when I have a budget, I don't have to worry about having a budget, and it would take a lot off of my plate. I think there's an extraordinary amount of time that our police chief has to utilize to deal with not having enough. And so, for those reasons, I would say just having a budget is a really good thing.
David?
Addressing the projected shortfall in the city's budget for 2025.
And Paul, anything you wanna add?
Anytime you pass any sort of taxation, it shows that there's a public sentiment, a positive public sentiment with the city.
Okay,
Can you repeat that? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
A tax increase, it gets passed by the citizens, shows that increased positive reaction from the citizens, right? Like, we're happy with what's going on. We trust.
Sort of a public
city. Yeah,
buy-in.
yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
A statement of value.
Yeah.
I was thinking
Betsy?
in terms of safety that, I mean, at least for me, I'll feel like more in terms of the timing. Like, I'll know if I make a phone call or I need something, I'm not left waiting. Like, I'll feel like, like I can get a response, when he was giving that example, whether to choose from going to the 6-year-old or continuing with the case, that we have enough people to do both. So.
Victoria?
I think it would show a strong statement to attract not only new people to live here, but new businesses to come here, that we place such an emphasis on public safety.
Terry, I'm just gonna come across. Do you have anything you want?
I think to add to that, it also sets a reputation and expectation to outside public and what our community stands for in the safety here, because we don't want to attract the wrong people. And so if we're heavy or on law enforcement and the importance of it, I think that shows just thinking about someone who works downtown and the differences of safety.
Mackenzie?
I was thinking, I'm trying to see how to word it, but how the officers are getting overwhelmed, and so their mental health, I think, would play a big part, because then they wouldn't be run into the ground as strongly. So maybe their longevity might even be longer rather than retirement time.
Work-life balance, helping retention.
Yeah, there you go. Well said.
Nicely said.
Nice, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Charlene?
I just think it does show that we do put value in our safety. So that's a positive statement.
Mm-hmm. Anything you want to add?
No, I don't, the reason I don't is because it won't affect me anyway, so I thought it's not really, I don't have to speak at it.
All right.
I just want to reiterate, when you guys talk about public
Richard?
safety and, police officers' health and all that, when you explain it to people, and you're not hearing me? Test.
You're too far away from
There
it.
we go, okay. When you speak to this to other folks in the neighborhood, the way to present it, at least the success I've had, is with telling them about the level of service. I mean, you can say, if you like what you got one cop, and that's it. Or do you want more service? So the public safety is the big name, but it's the level of safety or level of service. And we want to increase the level of service by increasing FTEs, full-time employees, and that will bring everything that you guys already mentioned together. But to get it to other folks, mention how much it is a month based on what you're getting on your return on investment. It's a big deal, and I like the ideas of, making Des Moines a place where people want to come because we have a level of service that is safe.
And for those who don't know, because you said you've been through this before, Richard's a retired firefighter. So he's familiar with this levies.
I have to explain why we do what we do, because it's expensive. People get bent out of shape. People get bent out of shape, they don't understand the background or the why. I mean, that's all it is. Because everybody, I think, has the same ideas. They just don't understand how you get there.
Bernice?
I would say to ensure safety, not just to talk about safety, to be able to ensure every community member of safety. That would be what I would emphasize. Yes, we want more officers. I'm 100% for that, wanting more officers, but it needs to produce safety in the process of all that we're doing. We have to be able to feel safe in our communities, safe to walk down the street. Yes, we want people to come in and move in and what have you, but for us, we need to feel safe. And we need that assurance that we're going to get that, because the money will be there. And then we trust that we'll be able to bring people in and keep people in. So to ensure safety is number one in my understanding of it.
Thank you. Are there any other opportunities, reasons? Anybody wants to add? Okay, so then the opposite side of the coin is what are the negative? What are the con arguments against raising the levy?
First off my head, some of us feel like, well, it's just $20, $25 a month. For people who are barely making it, it's a lot of money. And they need to know it's going to provide what is stated. And I don't have anything negative to say about our government here in Des Moines, but as is the case many times when you're dealing with the government, it gets muddled and it's earmarked, but it doesn't quite get there. So my thing would be that let people see the value of living on just a little bit less to feel a little safer.
Is there a
limit before it kicks in for seniors anyway? So it's like if you make less than $84,000.
Senior exemption is 84,000 household income, and it's an application process. It's not just automatic, but Yeah, and then it also applies to veterans and disabled persons.
Yeah.
Mhm. It's not an annual, I don't believe it's an annual application.
Oh, 4 years?
Every 4 years.
Then that might be something we make known.
Oh, we will, yeah.
Yeah.
And that is actually included in the ballot statement that we're going to be voting on tomorrow night.
Yeah, that was what I was gonna say, is one of the cons has to do with people being informed, right? So you asked a brilliant question, which is, what's this money gonna be used for? That has to be answered, right? The same thing, people don't know about this, right? The 84,000, it was moved up. You have to apply. It's not automatic just because you're a senior. But they will go even, I believe they might even go retroactively to a certain date. So, you know, you got to get your name in there. So the part of the con is that the information has to be more structured around the questions that people are going to ask.
But I would put that in the pro and the voters pamphlet. I would highlight that for those income levels, and that you, even if it passes, you're not going to be financially impacted, but you will benefit from having more police.
Mm-hmm. Terry?
I have a question in order to be able to keep contributing here. So the total he was saying, where he was saying between 2.45 and $3 million is what they think they will get for the year. Is that accounting for our large senior community that could be filling out all these applications to get to pay a lower amount, and all of the other people that would be paying a lower amount? Is that 2.5 to 3 million accounting for that? All these people could be asking for a lower amount to be contributing?
It's a tough one to calculate. We actually asked the county auditor, who was here for the study session 2 meetings ago, I think it was. And he will get us that information as to what that expected impact is. Victoria?
I seem to recall that what he said was 17% of Des Moines residents are seniors, so I don't think it would be an enormous amount, even if all 17% applied for that exemption
But if
and
you
qualified.
added veterans and you said disabilities, I mean, I don't, what's
But
the other percentage of that?
Yeah, if I can just sort of clarify one thing here.
Thank you.
Is that 17% of Des Moines are seniors, but that doesn't mean that they meet the minimum income threshold.
Okay.
That's what we don't know, because we don't keep track of people's income, and as a consequence, it's just not clear, but it shouldn't, I doubt it'll be much more.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
And it was moved from 135 to 140 after that question was originally asked. From one meeting to the next. It was at one point it was 1.35, right? And then it moved at the next meeting to 1.40.
Okay.
We had an answer to this question.
No.
We just did get an answer today from the city manager.
Huh.
Yeah.
Great.
It's approximately 29,000.
Your mic, me?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. We did get an answer today from the city manager through the auditor, and it's 29,000.
What is?
The amount of money that would be
Projected,
projected, yeah.
that, people who would.
The people would reduce it.
Okay. By 29,000 out of 2.5 to 3 million a year.
Right.
So it's not significant. Tracy?
Me?
Yes.
So, part of the reason he can do that is that same discount is already available to people in this city. It doesn't have as much to do with our levy in particular. It's just if you qualify for this discount, that means everybody who already qualifies has probably applied, and so there are a pretty predictable amount of people that will apply, that have already applied. If you've already applied and are receiving that, this is going to be, it's already in place for you. For example, if any of you are sitting here and you receive that discount on your property tax, it's automatic, even if this goes up, that discount will apply to this lift. And so that's why it's a little bit easy to predict. And then as far as the residents, subject, even though, let's say we have 20,000 residents or 17,000 residents who are seniors, a major portion of the seniors who are residents and can vote in this community are part of sub-communities that don't pay property taxes. Because they live in like the two biggest communities are Judson Park and Wesley, and those are nonprofit organizations. Their organization doesn't even pay property tax. So, so it's still a lesser amount of people that are going to be paying property taxes of all that entire senior community.
I mean, go to Charlene.
Yeah, well, some of my thoughts have been mentioned already, but my con is educating the public in general of what they're getting for this increase, and actually the value, and it is really people that it is affordable at $15 or $20 or $30 a month for our citizens. So just educating our public on what this levy means.
Eddie?
I think that being upfront and really letting them know why are they voting? Why would I vote for something? So I think that you need to be very transparent with it.
Can I add that to the pro side, just saying that, I mean, really, I'm hearing from you guys.
Yeah.
I'm hearing from a lot of this that it's really, you know, there needs to be information, there needs to be education. I don't necessarily see that as a con. I see it as an opportunity. More along with this process, just kind of, we can make it as like a footnote. But do you guys disagree? Okay.
Yeah, because I think the biggest thing, you know, is that everything has been so secretive and it's out in the open. This is what we need it for. So I love Bernie's question originally.
Yeah, this is one of the reasons we've gone to 3 different meetings on this topic in order to make sure that it's been out there for a while, is to be more transparent about what this is for and what we're thinking about. Bernice?
Yes, 2 questions. One is, what is the discount amount? You guys, you're talking about the discount for the seniors.
It depends on your level of income. They have it's a 3-scale system, a full, standard, and then the medium one. It's like 25%, 50%, or 75%. And if you, depending on your application and where you fit in there, that's how they come back and give you your, not award, but they classify you.
Mm-hmm. The level of exemption from the property taxes.
Yeah, and if you look on your parcel, in the King County records, if you look on your parcel, you can see if you're getting it right. You see other people, maybe your neighbors have it. You can see where they have a little notation on there. It's like usually a little S next to the property tax, and it'll say what you're getting taxed on. It's not what the value of the house is. Mm-hmm. It's the discount is on there.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Did you have a second?
What is the percentage of votes that are needed to pass the levy?
50% plus 1.
50% plus 1.
Simple majority.
Regardless how many people vote, as long
Correct.
as it's 50% plus 1.
Okay. David?
Thanks. A con argument that I've heard from a number of residents is that the city's projecting significant budget deficits that are escalating year over year, starting next year, and is going to have a reckoning with the city's budget, and that this is going to simply kick the can down for another year before the city has their reckoning with their budget deficits.
And just want to make sure, Jenny.
Along those lines,
Sorry?
not 1 cent more. That's what I hear is not 1 cent more. The city keeps asking and asking. They're building marina steps. I didn't ask for that. Not 1 cent more for public safety until you fix the things that are important to me whoever "me" is. That's the challenge that we're up against, is with all of the things that people talked about, the challenge is not enough information about what they're going to get for their money. And so those people who say, not 1 cent more, just need to be brought into the discussion so that they don't have that ground their heels in frame of mind.
Okay. Betsy?
So I was thinking more in regards to, you know, when I was like looking at numbers and population numbers, and I mean, our city numbers, are, according to the census, are decreasing. So that to me was like, well, then how much more people do we need, right? And so until I heard the numbers, I'm like, okay, maybe we do need more people after all. But at the same time, I feel like just the overall feeling, you know, that we have with police officers, maybe not so much here in Des Moines, but that feeling that, you know, if we do hire more, is it going to be the same thing, right? We're just increasing numbers. And one of my concerns was when he was going over the budget was that there, at least to me, it didn't seem like there was enough being allocated to further training and training to the officers that we already have to deal with, you know, new situations that perhaps 10 years ago or a few years ago they didn't have to deal with, like fentanyl or all those crazy drugs coming out and all the situations and cybercrime and all those things that are happening that I just think we're not prepared for. And I wish that in the budget that, you know, they're trying to allocate the sources for, if I was to hear like, oh, it's going to go into training or some of those aspects, that I would feel better about it. So that's why I wanted to put it in the con, because it's not included as far as I noticed.
It was part of the budget for each officer where it's over 200,000. That's part of their training. It's part of the budget per officer is in that.
For that further,
Yeah.
further training. Okay, then I just missed that, but.
And part of that training, you know, as new issues come up, that gets incorporated into training, because the officers don't stop training, ever. Every year there's more training and on new subjects. So, Kirsten?
So I can't tell if this is a con or not, so, and I don't live in Des Moines. So what is the reputation of the police department among the citizens in your neighborhoods? Do they have a good reputation? Are they viewed as, really don't want those guys to show up? You know, so depending on whether or not a citizen views the police department as being someone who's helpful or harmful, determines whether or not they're going to be willing to put that money to vote for the levy. Similar to not 1 cent more, but more like not 1 cent more for that police department.
Richard?
I just want to put up a con. One of the obvious con for me is that if we don't do this levy lift now, we're just going to be behind the curve, and it's just going to be harder to sell it. Everybody's got tax fatigue. I mean, I don't care who you are. You just hate asking somebody giving more. But the reality is we have to stay ahead of it. Even with the deficit coming in the future or whatever the plans are, if we don't increase it now, it's going to be a lot harder to increase it, you know, to $2 later. Hard sell.
So we talk a lot about the safety, and in order for that to happen, we need to have well-rested and not overworked officers. And so I think if we're able to have that budget and get the people that we need, we'll have healthier officers that are ready to go out there.
So that's a pro. That
It is, but if we don't,
I'm writing it as a con
Yeah.
because I already captured mental health.
Yeah. So I don't know how to say it in a negative way.
No, we all got you.
Richard, are your tent still up? Are you? I know it's. I don't worry about it. Anybody else? Any of the other negative arguments or arguments against raising the levy lid lift? Paul?
Not sure how to say this in a professional manner, but it's, you know, putting the toothpaste back in the tube, right? Like, that's never an easy task. So how do we get back to where we were, right? I mean, it's, right, but that's essentially what we're trying to solve here. That's the issue. It's a big task.
Mm-hmm.
Toothpaste part, right?
Yeah. All right. I don't see anything else. Anyone else? All right, thank you. And Jenny will get those to the council.
Yeah, thank you.
Mhm.
I know we went over time on this one, but I think that this was a valuable topic to get through and spend more time on. So, and I'm not sure that the next topic is going to take as long as we had set aside, but maybe we'll see. So, are we ready to move on to alleyway?
We are ready to move on to the alleyway. Hopefully,
Perfect.
everybody received their
Long list.
the list of all the names that were submitted. And so Jenny has volunteered to write on the board again, which I really appreciate it, and it's much more readable than if I were writing it.
I
so.
don't know. I don't know about that. Sorry,
Oh,
guys.
trust me. Go ahead, just look at my notes. And so we asked everybody to come back with their top 3 names. And the attempt will be, if we've got, 2 or 3 names, maybe 5 names that really kind of rise to the top of that, as we're recording everybody's top 3 preferences, then we've got, a way to get to those 3 names that can be presented to the council. And so that's the next task.
Yeah, so I had asked for each of you to kind of look through that list. Hopefully you all had time to do that. For the sake of trying to shorten the list a little bit, I did put, the number of people who had submitted that same name. So you can see there were some that definitely received more votes just from the citizens that were submitting. So 391 submissions overall, which is a pretty good list. And so the idea is, if we can go around, I'm going to write down the 3 that you brought forward. And if your name is already up there when we get to you, still read it. That's okay. I'm just not going to rescribe it. Okay. And then you all should have 3 dots. And we're going to do much like the ones that were on the committee last year, where we kind of went up and put our rankings on the, sorry, I'm a visual person. It was over there on that wall when we did it. So we put our rankings on the top 3 priorities at that time that we were discussing. So we're going to have you take those dots. We're going to have you put the dot next to your top 3 names, and your top 3 might change after you hear everybody else's list. And then we're going to see if we can have a top 3 kind of rise to the top that we maybe can have the committee then take to recommend to the council. Does that make sense for how we're doing this? Okay. Okay, so I'm going to move on over here. And then I think, it's just easiest, I think, if we just kind of go around the room, okay?
All right. Hang on one sec. Well, she gets paper out, but I'll start with David in a minute.
I had a clarification. Do we get to choose if it's way, alley, street? I mean, it's not the county that does that, or do we choose that? Or not we, but.
It can be part of the recommendation. We don't know definitively the answer. I believe,
'Cause I think
my best guess is it's an alley,
Yeah, they have their protocol, whatever.
but there may be a protocol we're not familiar with. And so we're not necessarily going to do that, and we did not get an answer.
We didn't get an answer. I posed that question to staff if they knew, and we didn't get a response to that. So we'll have you guys submit your recommendations, and if it has to be, X way is what's submitted, we might have to change it to X alley. Just know that, okay?
So, hey, Jenny, number 1 for me is going to be theater alley. My second choice is Backstage Alley. And my third is Waterland Way.
The one I added to that was Actors Alley.
I really like Lovers Lane.
What was it? I'm sorry.
Lovers.
Lovers.
Yes. Pearl. And I was really curious about Jack's Alley. Yes.
And there was no.
Oh, Alley. Yeah. And Jack's Alley.
So if you're curious about Jack, you don't know who Jack, he's a local character. And so he would daily wander up and down the entire city, popping into every single business and every single restaurant and engaging.
Jack. Okay.
And he has accompanied the president on his jet. He helped the astronauts get trained. He has jumped in, you know, he trained Evel Knievel. In other words, he just has lots of interesting stories. But I think he's now kind of relocated to Berrien to live with his brother. So.
You know, and it just occurred to me, I wanted to give thanks to Bettina and Victoria for really kind of stepping forward and helping to make this process work. And I think there was somebody else who am I leaving off?
I think it was Charlene, right?
Charlene, I'm sorry, Charlene. Yeah, you know, that was, you guys really stepped up and made this happen in a way that was manageable, and it's very much appreciated.
Thank you.
And
I
Bettina?
have to say that, just in case Jack is out there watching, got the #1, right? He was repeatedly mentioned, and so for that reason, Jack's is my #1. And I know quite a bit more.
Alleyway Street.
Because I was the one that asked the question about whether the post office would say alleyway or boulevard, it doesn't really matter to me which one it is. And my other two, theater was my second, which is already up there, and backstage was my third. So I'm done.
And Victoria?
Backstage Alley, Jack's Alley, Waterland Alley.
Jack's Alley.
And Mary Ellen, let her.
You got it, okay.
Oh, you want alley though, not way.
Yeah,
Okay.
doesn't
I'll give you
matter.
an option.
Doesn't matter.
So I also have Jack's Alley, Landmark Alley. And Van Gasken Alley.
Can you spell that for me?
VAN space GASTEN.
Oh, Van Gasken.
Yeah, did I spell it wrong?
Yeah, it has a KIN.
Oh, gosh.
No, GASKIN. Yes.
And
Thank
was that
you.
an alley?
Okay.
Yes.
It was written down here, Ian Van Gasken,
Maybe it's Ian.
G-A-S-K-E-N.
I thought it was KEN, but we can, if that's a winner, we can figure out the spelling.
Is it a historical person?
Yes.
Yeah.
They're contemporary also.
I'll look it up after.
Their house was located where the Overlook Park, is it Overlook Park that?
Soundview.
Soundview, thank you.
I'll look it up before if it rises to the top, okay? How would you spell it?
And Kirsten?
Backstage, alleyway, whatever, stage door, and theater.
And I was trying to think of like years down the road when this is like all up and coming and like the place to go in Des Moines and how, you know, you shorten things because it's just easier that way. So my top were Inlet Alley. So you want to go down to the Inlet? That's like where my mind goes. I'm a visual person too. Backstage and Sunset. All alleys because I thought that's what we were doing.
Yep, Backstage was one of mine. And then Waterside Alley and Encore Alley.
You want me to say it? You can say it.
Okay, yeah.
Charlene?
Oh, I just have Flatwater Alley.
Hold on, really quick.
Flatwater,
Black, BLA?
flat,
Oh, Flatwater.
Flatwater. My thought was we could even sell bottled water saying it was Des Moines Flatwater.
Helps with that budget deficit, right?
Right?
Eddie?
Like 7.5 Street. And I liked Waterland Way, and I liked Breezeway.
Richard?
Yeah, mine are up there. Jack's Alley is my number one because I have a relationship with Jack. He lives down my street. Him and his parents lived down my street, and I took his dad to the hospital when he had a heart attack. But Theater Alley and Backstage were mine.
Bernice?
Backstage Alley, Cinema Alley, and Stage Door Alley.
All right.
You guys sure shortened that list. I like
Oh,
it.
you did. That's great. So get your dots ready. Oh, I'm sorry, there's a question. Dave?
For Waterland, since it's come up two different ways, could we make it one line and then let the city decide whether they can use way or alley?
Just Waterland.
So it'd be Waterland Way / alley for voting purposes. Thank you.
That's a good idea. Any other suggestion? All right.
Okay, so I'm gonna move this stuff out of the way.
Mm-hmm.
And feel free to bring your dots on up and go ahead and
Stretch
put
your legs.
your
Mm-hmm.
3 dots up there. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So, you know, this sitting isn't good for you.
I suppose I should stand up, yeah.
What? Oh, that was.
Mm-hmm. Went fast and it really, really narrowed the
So
list.
I figured it would, so
Mhm.
we, that's why I felt like the earlier conversation was definitely warranted to go along, so.
Good.
Important.
Thanks. Yeah.
And so I will have this list back to you guys, if not tonight, first thing in the morning. And then
Okay.
I only send to, you, but I can ask Tim to distribute to full council in that email, so.
When we're gonna,
I don't think you guys can send to full council without.
create.
Yeah, create,
Yeah.
so I'll ask Tim to route it to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have body cam footage here in Des Moines?
Body cam footage,
Does they have
yes,
body
on the police officers, yeah.
Okay. I just know that there was that whole, like, they were testing it out, but I never heard if they actually went full on. Oh, they use a different program, that's right. They don't
And
use
then I
Axon.
think that was one of the big discussions in the very beginning is the capacity to store.
That's what, I remember we talked to an officer that says that you guys don't use Axon, you use something else to store. And that was what he was saying, so you guys were running into that.
Oh, really?
And then we have a state law or something about the requirements for how long you have to keep it, and then you can let stuff go, but then they keep everything that they're, of course, anything active
Right.
is
Summer
kept.
event.
Is that how
Yeah.
long it is?
Well, you have to keep it long enough
Is it
to
down in
let,
Yelm?
if there's a conviction, it
Yelm
goes all the way up on
Oh,
appeal.
yeah.
Yeah.
If there's a new trial, it's gotta come
Okay.
back.
Yep, in every crime, there's a different retention period.
Yeah.
I'm familiar.
Yeah, exactly.
So, okay.
But in order to put an alley, it was like alien alley.
Yeah, okay.
I thought that one was really clever, backstage pass. I call it backstage
Mm-hmm.
something like that. But
Yeah.
that was pretty clever
I
of
know.
somebody.
I still wanted to go down.
Oh, well, you didn't submit a name.
Acoustic Alley and Bootlegger's Alley.
Oh, there was some
Bootleggers was
That
on
was
there,
on the
yeah.
list, I know.
Yeah, it was.
The other one was Alien Alley,
Alien Alley, yeah, that would have been good.
because I think that the kind of black
Wow, Jack's is like really doing. Jack's Alley is just.
And if we could call it,
That's
if we
pretty
could
easy.
call it a road, I would love to call it a road instead, I mean.
Backstage, Waterland, and Jack's.
Jack's Lane, Jack's.
Okay.
So are they gonna decide tonight that what the top three is, or it's just gonna be a simple?
Oh, I think we have it.
Oh, I'm sure.
We have it. It's Backstage, it's Waterland, and it's Jack's.
Well, except for if you take the top three and then so
Alright.
everybody would put their last.
We're all
dollars.
voted.
So you get 'em-
Okay, so I think the three top choices you all have spoken. So it looks like Backstage Alley, Waterland Way or Alley, right? And then Jack's Alley. So what I'm gonna ask now is, this has not been added to an agenda for the council, so that is still a to be determined timeframe. But what I would ask is, if there's anyone that wants to, and I'm happy to do it, but if anyone wants to write up kind of the reasoning behind the name, the proposal, especially with something like Jack's Alley, you're probably gonna have to explain that one before, like when it comes to the council, giving a little bit of background might not be known to everybody. So if someone wants to take a shot at writing up those three reasons, anyone? I see fingers being pointed. You want to do it? Okay.
You guys are too used to hearing from me, otherwise I would do it.
Okay, thank you.
Yay.
And then also looking for a volunteer or two for when it is time to present to the council, that you're there at the meeting to make that presentation on behalf of the Citizens Advisory Committee. So are we still pointing the finger at Bettina? But Charlene, you want to? Okay, Charlene. And then I don't know if you want to also, so if the two of you want to kind of be the champions for the citizens group. And so we'll obviously keep you posted on when that gets added. I think there's a process to get stuff added to your guys' agendas and stuff, so it might be a little bit.
There's a possibility we might hear from Victoria that night too.
I take that personally. But don't you have a cutoff that's required sometime in May by some official
June.
first responder type?
Yeah, I think it's in June.
Okay.
Yeah, we've got a little bit of time.
Okay.
We'll get there.
So we will, and I will send all this information out to you, as well as this. So when I get this, I'll be sending it to the full group, so you'll be able to see the list that you came up with for the levy stuff too. So thank you. That was great. Yeah.
Again, this comment is actually for the public that's not here, but that might be watching, and what was this process? So we had a jot form that we created, and we put it out on Facebook. Those of us that cared to, we put it out on any social media. You kept a list. I had people call me, text me, DM me in a variety of ways. And then between this master list where people were allowed to do 1, 2, or 3, we ended up with about 320 or 19, or 391. So for the public, that's how it's done. And then this was the easiest part. So surprised that it went that fast to get down to 3.
For sure. And thank you to Victoria for getting it in the Waterland blog as well. And then Charlene, I think you put it out to the PTAs. Yeah, so thank you. So it shows what, I think Bettina and I were talking before the meeting too, kind of what feedback you can get from the community in a very short order. So appreciate it.
One thing that we probably shouldn't miss the opportunity to take that list and let folks know that there's going to be a council meeting when the name is going to be selected, to show up and start using that information to communicate with the folks that have actually stepped up and said they've raised their hands. Let's use that information to continue communicating with them.
From the contact list.
Yes,
Their
from the
contact
list,
information.
yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. Perfect. Okay.
All right, and so the next topic is our next meeting. It was not the last iteration of the Citizens Advisory Committee did not meet monthly. We don't have a specific thing to address for a May meeting. But do you want to have a May meeting? And what topics do you want to deal with? And Victoria?
JC's blog requested that any citizen who would like should tell him what they think the 3 questions are that they are being asked in terms of, you are being asked in terms of what do you want for a city manager. And I would think that this is such a good body to ask those questions of, to help you make those decisions as well, to help the search firm make those decisions, those 3 questions that you are being asked to consider.
So you would like to have a meeting in May, and that is one of the topics you'd like to address, correct?
If it's time sensitive, then yes. I mean, if we're running out of time, either that or June, but I know then we run into summertime vacations. So, you know, we're gonna have a long break, and my other request is I would like us to tackle the budget. And, you know, we are an advisory group. I would like us to give our advice, and we all have opinions about the budget. Thanks.
So Victoria, can I ask a question on that, on the budget? So when you meet in November to review the proposed budget, is that what you're talking about? You want to dive deeper into that, or are you?
I do want to dive deeper, and also because we have this levy lift that will impact which way the budget goes, what they're going to do as a plan B. And Chuck Coleman is not here tonight, but he is so much more read up on the budget than I am. But many of us here have handled complex budgets. And so, you know, we can be prepared to take a look at those first drafts of the budget and see if things seem out of line to us, or if there are savings that can be culled already even. I know it's too soon for a final, but it's not too soon to ask us what we think of where they're going.
Thank you.
I have a question,
Okay.
clarifying question. So Victoria, when we're talking about that, are you asking for information already? You said it's too early to ask for the final, but when are you proposing the subject matter?
Jeff is working with his directors, as I understand it, from now through the summer, I believe, right? This is the first biennial budget, so they're going to have to put a good deal of thought into the planning on it. And that starts way before it's due. I know he has spoken to us at the last several meetings, but in terms of his timeline, but whatever his timeline is, I would like us to be brought in to, you know, to advise. That's what our body is, and whenever it makes sense to you and him to bring us in before November.
I think that the
Can I answer that?
Yeah,
really
go ahead,
quick?
go ahead.
So Victoria, it is an advisory body, but I do want to make sure that we all understand that, that it would be inappropriate to provide this body information before it's provided to this body. And so even when the first draft or the discussions do happen, that there needs to be a recognition that this body only meets once a month. So anything that's discussed has to be pertinent to what kind of information is going to be available for you to digest and then discuss at the next meeting, right? So you have to make sure that whatever you take up is appropriate, and that the other thing that needs to be very cautioned is that you need to recognize you would not be able to have direct access to staff with the information you have. And so that's why your discussion and your consideration becomes constrained, except for amongst yourselves outside of this meeting. So if we get our first draft, like at the end of August, that's when you would get your first draft. And then you would not meet with us for a whole month. In the meantime, we would have had other briefings and discussions. So whatever you decide to talk about, it needs to be focused and way more singular. Meaning not 10 topics or 5 topics that you want to discuss at one meeting, right? So you would somehow need to hone it down. What I'm talking is the complexities of your ask. So you would need to hone down your interests, and because you're going to have 15 people to what are you going to bring to the council or to the finance committee? They're going to be working on this. So I'm saying it's an interesting topic, but it's a difficult ask to make it work with 15 people that meet once a month. So that's why you need to be careful about, and that you would not have direct access to staff.
How do the rest of you feel about providing input on the budget? And do you think that there is a way that we can do it efficiently, given how complex it is?
Okay, hang on, David seems to be right on this topic, so, and he's had his.
I'm going to endorse what Victoria is talking about. Last year, we were giving a final budget, and it felt a lot like this is a done deal. We're using you to communicate out to the public what the final budget is. And we had a rather heated discussion that we were ready and available to help inform decision-making for 2024. And I know the mayor that promised that that would happen is no longer the mayor, but I'm seconding what Victoria is saying. Decisions are being made now by city staff, and you're missing an opportunity to get feedback from your Citizens Advisory Committee as those decisions are getting made.
Richard? No, I'm sorry, can we, Gene, did you have something?
Yeah, excuse me, just a bit of clarification, and both to Victoria and Dave. Are you saying that you want a role in the citizen's voice in establishing what the priorities are? Maybe not the nitty-gritty, the details and stuff, but just the citizen saying, no, here's where we think that we should be focusing on.
You got it, Gene.
Okay, because that can be done before any document is given. I mean,
right.
You know,
Yeah, policy priorities.
policy priorities in the budgeting, that certainly.
Does that, Dave? Does that? Okay.
So just similar to kind of what we did last year, where we set the priorities for the city and the neighborhoods, right? You're wanting to do, what are those policy priorities, but do them earlier than August, because last year that's when we we came up with that list in August, and by then it was too late really to kind of see a lot reflected in the budget. So do it earlier so that maybe the staff would then be able to receive that information and then see how they were able to utilize that. Okay.
That makes sense.
Okay, I think we're tracking. Okay.
Well, there's a perfect, excuse me, there's a perfect example going on right now is the question of, you know, what is is public safety the biggest priority? Are parks and rec a priority? Is the marina a priority? And I think that it would be beneficial coming from the overall group, some kind of an idea of what the citizens think. Okay, this is where you should be concentrating your money.
Okay, Richard?
Yeah, I'm just gonna say, I agree with, you just said what I was gonna say. The prioritization or brainstorming some things to send forward so they have something to think about is definitely appropriate. And I needed to ask, is it a zero-based budget that starts from the ground up every year or biannual now? Or is it budget plus cost of living, or how do they do their budgeting?
It is zero-based.
It is zero-based. Okay, so zero-based is a lot more complicated because you got to start over, kind of. And so giving detailed input at this level is probably not helpful. But prioritization and what we want to see for our neighborhoods and for our communities is definitely important for everyone to hear.
Bernice? Oh, sorry.
And it is biannual now.
Yes.
What I was going to say, it's kind of a side remark, but we're here for the pleasure of the council. You tell us what you need us to contribute, to my understanding. I don't see it as we come up with the agenda as to what you want from this group of people. You communicate to us, this is what we would like for you to investigate or spread or whatever, however you want to communicate it. But my understanding is we work for your pleasure and not the other way around. So nothing to do with what was just said, but just as long as maybe my understanding is off. But I'm here to be able to give advice when asked. It's almost like our grown children. My husband said, honey, we give advice when asked. They don't ask, we don't give it. So it keeps peace in the family. And to me, it makes sense because they know they can ask if they want it. If they don't want it. So I feel the same way about serving on this board. Whatever you all need from us, I want to be able to do it without bringing my own agenda to get you to do what I want you to do.
Okay. Bettina? Richard. Richard's still learning the process. He'll get there eventually, though, I'm sure.
So I had to leave for a 90-year-old grandmother call that I had. But anyway, just a point of clarification. In terms of, there are other venues for us to participate that are identified, like a financial, like more in depth than just right here, right? I mean, we're citizens, we can write you, we can communicate, we can read whatever documents come out, and we can attend other meetings that are specifically around the budget without having to have it all done here. So just because we're going to define right now that we're going to specifically address priorities doesn't leave us like a closed door. We can always go deeper. For anybody who wants to go deeper, there's lots of opportunities to go deeper with anybody in the council. Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know all of our phone numbers and emails. You can write to us 4 times a week, and many of us are good at getting back, and even meeting personally with any of you. Hope you guys all know that this is not your only access point.
Mm-hmm.
We want to help answer questions.
You know, and to kind of address Bernice, I appreciate what you're saying.
Yeah.
But I think that there is some agenda setting that needs to happen on this committee, by this committee, and we will try to address those in the context of the committee as best we can, rather than just saying, you know, we need your advice on this. Because I think we may not essentially address all the issues that people want to be addressed on that if it's all coming from the top down. And part of that needs to come from the committee up. And so I wanted, as Tracy and I talked about this when she asked me to try to chair the meetings, is to be more inclusive and get more input from this committee about what they want to do. And so we're in our 3rd meeting of the year. We're at the point where I didn't see a particular project that needed to be addressed in May, but I think maybe we have a couple of things, and now is the time to begin at least in that general sense, budget priorities as the budget starts being put together.
I did see in the handout that we do have that opportunity as a group. If we see something that we feel that needs to be brought to the attention of the council, we can do that. So yes, I'm on board with that.
Okay. And I just want to make sure that that's a little shift from the way things went last year. And so we're trying to be a little more inclusive of that. So any other topics, potential topics for a May meeting? Okay. Then the questions for the city manager, is what I heard. Now, every member of the council.
Qualities, not questions, three qualities of the city manager, is that what, okay.
Qualities
Make
of
sure
the
I got
city
it right.
manager. And understand that all the members of the council have had one-on-one sessions already with the recruiter. But the process goes on. And I don't think it would be wasted to try to do something like that and to try to get to maybe a top 5 qualities that people are interested in a similar fashion that we did. So is that consistent with what people want to have a discussion on in May? Okay. And then secondly, our budget priorities, you know, what's important to be funded at current levels or above, what's important to be funded at less than current levels. Is that an adequate statement? Tracy?
So, so what will happen if that's a topic is we'll probably talk and say, how do we prepare the committee, or what kind of materials do we bring to the table or ask the committee to do before they come to the table and have this discussion? So, so what I'm gonna ask you is, when you're talking about budget priorities, the thing that comes to my mind is the general fund pie. And it's in the budget every year. It's somewhere in the middle of the packet. It's a big document that you can find on the website. For example, if you look at the city budget 2023, and in the middle there is a pie for the general fund. And this city has about $75 million that goes through it every year. But a bunch of that funding is restricted. It can only go to a certain place, so no decisions need to be made about it. So the only decisions that the council makes is on the one fund called the general fund. Every other fund that you'll see, the money comes from a certain place and goes to a certain place, no decision. So if you go to the general, so this is what I'm asking you, if this is the assignment you would like. If you go to the general fund pie, you will see how much percent of all that general fund money goes to certain things. A little teeny bit goes, you know, a certain amount goes to parks, a lot goes to police, a certain amount goes to, you know, whatever, admin, city manager's office, the city council. So you'll see all that. And that pie is a statement of our values as a city. That is, when you're talking about, if you want to discover priorities or kind of orient your mind about our priorities and how much we spend on each one, you could look at that and go, wow, we only spend that much on parks programs. I think we should spend more. Or we only spend this much on human services. I think we should spend more. But recognize every time you move a line of the pie, you would also be responsible of moving another line of the pie. And so I'm thinking, if that's where you want to come down on priorities and come back, do you think that is a reasonable way to help you get started?
Okay.
You like that idea?
David?
All those that are not in the general budget, that are money general fund, where the money's flowing through. Is it the case that the council has no control over decisions around where that money goes and how it gets used?
Pretty much correct, because it's things like almost all that other funding is governed by state law.
Okay.
And so where you get your real estate excise tax, it must go to this, or where you get user fees from public works or impact fees when you go to build a house, all that money has laws around it. So
there is discretion within that.
Not very much, and that's why the council doesn't really make, unless we shut down a department and then, like, we contract out.
But the general fund is a good place to start.
Yeah.
I mean, frankly, it is the biggest piece that we have discretion over.
Yeah.
And so it's a good place to start. Now, does everybody know how to access the budget online?
Well, Jenny can follow up with
Well, I
it.
was wondering whether we needed to ask Jenny to do more, or whether people were comfortable looking at that general fund of the current budget and going forward from there.
Yeah, I can provide a link, and I'll even tell you what page the pie's on.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I gotta find it first, though, right? Okay.
That should be plenty for our next 2-hour meeting. And we want to do this in May, basically on the same
Yeah, so if we're looking
timeframe?
at the same schedule, it would be May 22nd, which is the Wednesday right before Memorial Day weekend. So I want to make sure that we're aware there's a holiday weekend approaching if you're leaving early on your trips. But sound good? Keep consistency? Okay. Same place, same time.
Okay. And I only have one other thing on that day, so. I'll be done. Yes. Terry?
Please. Yes.
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Sarah, for helping us out there.
That's Sarah's. Okay.
Thank you,
Are there,
Sarah.
thank you. Are there any other questions that people have right now?
One comment.
Oh,
Sorry, were you gonna
Tracy?
move to, I was just gonna say,
I
you
would-
rock. I'm so glad you guys are here. Thank
yes.
you.
Thank you all very much.
Yeah.
And I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Second? Second, and we are adjourned. Thank you all very much. 8 minutes early. Yeah.